All right, great to see everybody. And so here I'm just going to advance to the first slide and kick it off. So let's start with the land acknowledgement. And so UAA is established on the ancestral homelands of the Dena'ina, Atna, Alutiiq, Sugpiaq, and Eyak Dahakshnu peoples. All right, so this is the promised safety minute. And so the emergency exits, if we need them, hopefully we don't. There's one on the north side at the end here and another one on the south side. And you are asked not to use the main spiral staircase that you may have come up on. The restrooms, if you have probably seen them, if you came up on the elevator, they're right over here. And the library staff has asked us, since we are in the library, if you're outside this room and you're chatting on your phone or talking with others, just be considerate of students that may be studying in the library. And if needed, you may step into one of the exit stairwells for ease of conversation. In case you're wondering, yes, we did get this picture from AI and we asked it, since we're in a library, we asked for a safety picture in the library and that's what we got. All right, so I'm Kendrick Mock. I'm Dean of the College of Engineering. Bill Schnabel is right here, Dean for CEM from UAF. And before we jump into the presentation, I did want to thank our staff. And so Kate Avery is back here documenting the event and kicked us off and really was instrumental in organizing this whole thing. Over here checking us in. We've got Tammy Choquette and Jen Weisel. And Andy Tygor and Jay Hall are the tech crew behind the scenes. And I feel like I'm missing somebody, but hopefully I didn't. Oh, Jana, thank you. Jana Combs. All right, so thank you everyone for helping put this event on. So why are we here? So we know that Alaska, the country, the world needs engineers right now, needs engineers really badly. And we're in this crazy situation where a large portion of the people that could be engineers are not even in the field at all. So we have some slides coming up here, and I think you all know about the numbers, where only 25% of the engineering workforce are women around there. So we're hoping that we can change that. And we kicked this event off in Fairbanks last year and are continuing the conversations here today. And so thanks for coming. I know it's a big ask for you to take pretty much your whole day to come here, and we really appreciate it. Bill, would you like to give any welcoming words as the co-host of the event?
Sure. Thank you very much, Henrik. And thank you, all of you, for coming and giving your passion and your energies and your excitement to this event. We, as Kendrick mentioned, and as many of you probably recognize, we in the state of Alaska need to bring everyone to the table as it pertains to the engineering workforce and forging the future for Alaska. And so we also recognize that this isn't an issue of one university or the other university, or it's an issue that all of us, universities, as well as industry and parents and all of Alaska society, needs to work together to do. I believe there are a lot of important things in the world, but I think we will all agree that engineering is one of those really important things. If we're going to create our future, we need to have those engineers there. And so engineering and the fate of engineering to us is crucial. And so bringing everyone to the table is part of that. And thank you for helping us figure out how to do this.
All right, so we have some welcome messages or videos that we're going to queue up, and then we'll get on with our presentation. Oh, are we? No. Andy.
Hello, I'm Sean Parnell, Chancellor of the University of Alaska.
Well, hello, everyone. Know that I'm pleased to be able to join you very briefly today as you focus on a shared goal of attracting more women into the engineering fields. And to the young women who are pursuing the STEM field, you should know the road ahead is just filled with opportunities. And it's not easy work, you know that. But every hurdle that you overcome will only make you stronger and more resilient. Alaska and the nation at large is facing a workforce shortage, and that certainly includes in the STEM fields. We need passionate and talented young women like yourselves to address our state's challenges. You have the opportunity, whether it's designing and building water and wastewater infrastructure, roads, ports, satellites, broadband, bridges, erosion mitigation, power generation, airports. There's so much more. And the work that you will do will make such a difference, not just a job and an opportunity there, but making a difference for generations of Alaskans to come. So thank you all for putting this initiative together to promote women in Alaska's engineering workforce. Hope you have a great day and a productive event. Take care.
Alaska Anchorage. Hello, I'm Sean Parnell, Chancellor of the University of Alaska Anchorage. And I'm sorry that I can't be with you, but it's great to welcome you to our campus. UAA College of Engineering is proud to host this event, Alaska Engineering Horizons for Women. We salute your dedication and commitment to shaping the future of engineering in Alaska. Our university is proud to honor the brilliant minds and countless contributions of women in engineering. As engineers, you use specialized skills and knowledge to find solutions through innovation. You make a tremendous difference in our world. Thousands of engineers across Alaska are enhancing the quality of life and economic vitality of our state. We see your work in energy, mining, transportation, public works, technology, telecommunications, and across our own UAA campuses. UAA is honored to have exceptional women in engineering within our university community and across Alaska's workforce. The theme for your workshop, Bridging Industry, Education, and Community, is a perfect fit for our university. This week, you'll share insights for growing Alaska's engineering workforce by making it more welcoming. The workshop is a collaboration between UAA College of Engineering and UAF College of Engineering and Mines, along with industry and community partners. Thank you all for being a part of this important work and for strengthening connections with each other to build a bright future for Alaska.
Great. All right. So we have in person our provost, Denise Rangi. Oh.
Take the win. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and be a part of this incredible event. When I was thinking about it, I did what I always do. I went to the Department of Labor, right? And I know you're going to see more in-depth statistics, but it's just astounding when you think about the job growth that's projected for Alaska over the next 10 to 15 years. It ranges anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending upon which engineering subspecialty we're talking about. And that kind of job growth presents a real opportunity for us to diversify the workforce. When I was thinking about what makes it important for there to be more women in the engineering workforce, and as the mother of an engineer, I asked my son this. He's a chemical engineer in the pharma industry. And I was like, what do you see as the reason to diversify the workforce? And he said, number one, there'll be a broader pool of talent from which to draw. If you're only likely to attract males, then that cuts your talent pool in half. So that's one good engineering answer he gave me. Number two, women bring broader perspectives into the workforce. It's just natural. We are slightly different from one another. And the more differences that we can bring, the more creative solutions we can come up with. And of course, that's what engineers do. The tendency is, including more females in the workforce, tends to lead to increased retention and enhanced organizational reputation, and many more. There's so many reasons that this work that you're about to embark on or continue on, thank you, Dean Schnabel, is really, really critical. And it fits beautifully with the kinds of things that we as the universities in Alaska focus on, right? We focus on connecting students, industry, K-12, government, all the different partners. We see ourselves as that pivot point. I want to mention just one more thing to kind of keep in mind as you have your conversation today. Being here in Anchorage reminds me that UAA is proud to be a part of another significant workforce effort, and it's being led by the Anchorage School District. Those of you that live in Anchorage have heard of the Academies of Anchorage process that the school district here is going through, but some of you might not have heard of that. And the whole goal of the Academies of Anchorage is to create excitement in young people about the value of connecting education to workforce goals. But the way the Academy's model works, it's going to require tons of effort and input ongoing from industry, because every student is going to have job shadowing and internships, and they expect industry leaders to come into the classrooms on a regular basis and become part of the instructional team. So from my perspective, getting deeply involved in that work on behalf of the university, it's caused me to think about which elements of that do we already do and which elements could we expand on. And so I mentioned that today as a challenge. Think about how we could perhaps create, at least from the Anchorage School District, a seamless P16, P20 process where the same kind of attention and the same kind of deliberate connections between industry and education can be a part of the way that we attract more people into the field. So thank you. I know you have a ton of work ahead. I would love to stay longer. As I shared with the deans, I'm off to a climate conference that we're hosting in another building here, but I'm going to stay for a few more minutes and then we'll sneak out. Thank you again.
All right, and we have one more welcome from the SWE president and our advisory board chair, Stephanie Mormello.
So when I was asked to speak here, I always do a little bit better tap dancing than I do preparing remarks. I wanted to see what the room looked like, think to myself, you know, what is important about women in engineering and what does diversity in the workplace mean to me? And throughout my career, I think the best and most productive teams I've ever been a part of have been very diverse, and not just in gender, but in age and experience level, in expertise, because we all bring something different to the table. You know, you have the person who is brand new out of school that asks the question of, why are we even doing it this way? And sometimes, like, you look at your 20 years of experience and you're like, why are we doing it this way? Like, what tells us, you know, that we have to be doing it this way? And sometimes asking those questions really puts a different perspective on things. And like we said, I think we all recognize there are differences between men and women, and we bring different things to the table. And I like having those varying perspectives and the ability to challenge each other and just bring those things. And not just varying, I mean, looking at the challenge, I guess, as we're looking at this. When you look at engineering, sometimes there are people who survive school, and then there's some people who truly enjoy school. And I think sometimes as an industry where we can help make that connection is for those people who may just need to survive school and get into industry, is letting them know that your job is really different than school. So if you're not enjoying school, let me tell you, working is very, very different. And yes, you have to survive that tough part. You have to get through school. You have to prove that you can do the mathematics, you can do the calculations, you have those basic fundamental things. And then you actually get to play and you get to use it in different ways. And then the people who truly enjoy school find ways to spark them. And whether they want to stay in academia, whether they want to go into research or come into the workforce, find those different things that can make those connections so we can keep them. And I think that's part of how do we attract them and then how do we keep them? Because I think things change throughout your career. They change from high school to college. This is 20 years for me in the industry. I graduated from UAA in 2004. And I am not the same person today that I was when I graduated. I'm not the same person as I was 10 years ago in my career. And I think it's important to let people know that it does change. You can make choices and you can change the industry and the world with what you do. And I'm just excited to see how we can engage more people that way.
So at the E-Week banquet a couple of weeks ago, Jana and I were sitting next to each other at the table, and the organizers of the banquet had put a whole bunch of old newspaper articles from, I think they were all from the same issue of the Anchorage Daily Times from 1981, but we were laughing about this one, but also, you know, you have to laugh. But this was 1981. I was 1 year old in 1981, and it really made me think of my mom and the stories that she used to tell about being in the workforce in the 70s. And, you know, back in 1981, clearly the people who wrote this article, engineers are men and they have wives. And their wives have luncheons to promote their, as they adore their husbands for their engineering brilliance. And I'm sure their husbands were pretty brilliant, but you know, maybe some of those wives could have engineered something other than finger sandwiches. So yeah, this one really made me think of my mom and the stories she used to tell about being in the workforce in the 70s. And it does make me think about, you know, we have made progress since then. And then on the other side, this other article kind of shows a flip side, which is that efforts to get young women into electronics and other forms of engineering go way back too. This one goes back to 1975. And actually, Kate Avery was the one who added this to the slide. Did you have a special story that you wanted to tell about this article?
Well, this person in the corner here looks familiar to anybody else. Like it took me.
Oh my gosh.
Was it?
That's me.
So yeah, the high school I went to was a very avant-garde high school. And back in 1975, a retired Navy guy said he wanted to develop a course that girls would take. And it's a real fun article to read because like the wives, part of the reason that he wanted girls to take this was for homemaker safety. Right? But that's okay. He actually in the article says, you know, this is our future, is girls who can do engineering, and electronics was what he said was the best place for women, not mechanical engineering, because it doesn't take upper body strength. Right? But you know, so there were issues, but the point is that in 1975, people were already thinking about women in engineering and the fact that they needed to be in engineering. So yes, that is me up there. And I was pulled out of math class to be the token female in that picture.
All right, so actually I'd like to invite Bill back. So this slide is kind of a recap about what happened in Fairbanks. And so, Bill, you're up again.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And about a little over a year ago, a group of people got together and decided, hey, we should have a meeting and try to keep up the momentum on this idea of increasing opportunities for women and underrepresented groups in engineering. And we do that very humbly because we recognize that lots and lots of people have been thinking about this challenge over time. We are not the first to do it. We will not be the last to do it, but that does not mean that it is not really, really important. And we, like everybody else, have the right to stand up and say, yes, this is important. So we gathered together people and we had some folks from industry. You know, we did what you would do if you wanted to have a meeting. You called up people you knew, you put out some flyers, you tried to get people to come, and that's what we did. And it was great. We came up with I really want to commend Kate Avery because we have a really cool handout that we came up with afterwards that kind of summarizes it. And I won't go over all the details of the handout, but we had some plans, and we had and Jenny came up from Anchorage, and we just thought this is a cool thing. And we had people from industry, and we had students talking, and a couple of things that we came up with. You know, we went through and looked at our data for the students at CEM in College of Engineering and Mines, and you know, this is approximately how many women we've had in the program over the years, and we'd like to increase those numbers and things like that. I provided some data about UAF because that's what was available. Kenrick or Jenny are going to provide data about UAA today, and I looked at those data. They look pretty much the same. We have very similar issues across the state. You know, 20% women thereabouts in the engineering college. But here's the thing. We came up with some plans. We came up with some ideas about, oh, this is what we should do. And one thing that we said at that workshop was, we're going to have another one. And we're going to have a meeting in a different community. And we were thinking Anchorage already. We're going to follow up on that. And we're going to do it. Well, this is it. This is the next step. We also made a lot of plans. We said, we're going to do this, and we're going to accomplish this, and we're going to form this task force, and we're going to kick ass. And we haven't kicked ass yet. I'm just going to say it. We haven't, you know, we came out of that meeting with a lot of energy. And it felt really good. And we all recognized, yeah, we want to do these things. And no, I didn't meet the goals that I set for myself on, oh, let's organize this and do all these things. But we're going to try it again. And we're going to continue trying it. And we talked about what's important, what works, what doesn't. And we talked about, oh, we don't want things just to be all talk and no action. And I know that's I know that that's a threat, and that's always something we want to avoid. But you know what? Regardless, we still have to talk. We have to keep going. And so we're going to come up with some actions today. We're going to do more talking on this. We have formed a group of people in Fairbanks and in Anchorage, and you here today that are demonstrating that, yes, this is important. I feel like I'm monologuing, so I'm going to sit down, but I will say this. It's also important because this isn't just a challenge for engineering colleges. This is us and the workforce together, hand in hand, recognizing that if we want to overcome challenges in the state of Alaska, we need everybody at the table. That includes a higher proportion of women and underrepresented groups across the spectrum that are seeing themselves as engineering students and seeing themselves as engineers and completing and getting into the workforce and staying in the workforce. And that is a top to bottom challenge that we all have different levels of things we need to do and meet. And we can do it because we have the passion to do so. So thank you so much. Thank you to Kenrick and Jenny and Tammy and Jana. And thank you all for organizing this. We are honored to be here. And Jen. And I just want to say, I want to introduce my sister, Jessica Schnabel, because she's part of this. And Yeah, so my sister's involved too. So in case anybody's wondering, and I am older. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, so as Bill alluded to, we have some data about UAA College of Engineering graduates and percentages of women. And so this one shows the percentage of female UAA College of Engineering graduates versus national trends. And so this kind of lay the groundwork of where we're at in terms of what we're producing out of the university. So it's pretty, so the green line on the left for each one of these years from 2013 to 2022. So the green line are percentage of women Bachelor of Science College of Engineering graduate, so 20%. The yellow one are master's students. And so in general, we've had more women master's students than bachelor's students or graduates. And then next to it in the gray, dark gray, and the lighter gray are the national for women bachelors and masters. So we started out here, we're a little bit above the national, and then sometimes we're below it. But in general, we're kind of bouncing around 25%. So we're not really that different nationally when you average across all these years. And there's also a little bit of, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna ask, are these master's students that also got their bachelor's at UAA?
They may have, that part hadn't been wasn't teased out of these numbers.
Also, are you offering like, are there specific, I'm assuming that you narrow down the focus of engineering? It's not, this is all engineering disciplines, right?
This is all disciplines in our College of Engineering. Yeah, and actually on the next slide, there's a list of them.
I was curious if you knew like what discipline was bringing people back for a master's.
We might have a guess at that. Most of our math, well, we'll see. Our project management is our program that has the most master students in it. And then I was going to say some of this is also some laws of small numbers. So our number of master's students is not huge. It's 50-ish in some cases. So nationally and at UAA, we're pretty close. And then this one shows College of Engineering bachelor's degree graduation rates for males and females. And so this is done using this cohort model. So the idea is you have a cohort of first-time freshmen that started in 2013, and then you track them for the next 10 years. And then you have another cohort that starts in 2014, and you track them for the next, whatever, 8 years. And so this averages together those cohorts and shows years 4 through 8. So, there's a few students that might have graduated in year 3, but not too many. And so what the bars show is after year 4, we had 19.4% females graduating, and it goes up to 36.1. So most of our female students and male students take around 6 years before they graduate. And then there's a few stragglers, I guess, that would take an extra year or 2, but not too many. Yes.
Do you know if these are full-time students or part-time?
I guess Jenny,
They are both,
they're both.
but they are first-time freshmen, which admittedly is a certain percentage of our student body.
Yes.
So on one hand, it might seem like 44% is not that great, but it actually is pretty good. So at least compared to the average at the campus, the average graduation is like in the 30-something%. And you can also see that women graduate at a higher rate than men. And one of our hypotheses is that it's more of a self-selecting group of women that decide to be in the College of Engineering and maybe are a little more motivated to finish. So that's something we could maybe look into more to see some of the reasons why. But the graduation rates are actually pretty good once we can get them in the door. And then this one shows the 10-year average graduation rates for women by discipline. And so this is if you take civil engineers, both bachelor's and master's, about 30%. And then the percentage of women for the other disciplines in our college, computer systems engineering and computer science, electrical and geo are lower. And then our discipline, project management, which right now is a master's program only, has the highest proportion of women graduates. And then a little higher for masters than bachelors. So that's a little bit about the landscape of the women engineers that we're producing, and certainly we'd love to get our numbers up. And we can see we've got mostly in the highest representations in civil and project management. Okay, so I am going to switch it over to Rochelle Johnson from UA Center for Economic Development, who's going to talk about some data behind the labor workforce. The content should be
Hello, I'm Rochelle. I'm with the University of Alaska Center for Economic Development. We are a center that focuses on economic development across Alaska through market research, feasibility studies, and business planning, and entrepreneurship development. But our role specifically for this effort is to pull together some of the numbers behind women in engineering in Alaska's labor market. So not just the students that are going through our programs here in state, but the women who are in the workforce doing the work. I am not an engineer. I'm an economist, but that's another male-dominated field, I would like to point out. So I wanted to start off today with like a really high-level picture of what women in the workforce looks like. And it's nice to sort of zoom back and look at it for over the last 100 years or so. Currently, women represent about 54% of women in the US are participating in the workforce. That's a number that has grew really consistently up until the late 90s and then kind of flattened out and declined. And that's not necessarily a bad, well, it is a bad indicator because we have workforce shortage, but it's a function of women retiring. And you'll see here that it's part of a similar trend with the male population as well. We're seeing more and more people entering the retiring population and leaving the working population. I do like to point out that there at the end, which is kind of hard to see, we did have a little drop because of COVID in our labor force participation across the US. But since then, women have re-entered the workforce at a higher rate than men. So that's really, I think, a positive signal for our labor market. Looking at Alaska, I'm going to talk about kind of two ways of measuring participation. One is a percentage of women, the women population that are participating in the workforce. And then the other is like the percentage of women within an occupation that are women versus men. And so in Alaska, 58% of women out of our total female population are participating in the workforce. So we're doing better than the rest of the US, which I always like when we're doing better than the rest of the US. It makes me really happy when I can say that with data. And then across our workforce, 48% of the whole workforce is women. And that's because we are kind of at a little bit at parity with men who are participating in the workforce. I have it in my notes. We have about 68% of the men in Alaska are participate. Oh no, that's the men in the US. Flipping through. About 60% of the male population is participating in the workforce. So we're like really close to even keel there, which is pretty cool. Compared to other states, Alaska is sitting at that 58%. We're kind of middle of the road where it's like how many women are participating in our workforce. North Dakota and Minnesota are there at the top with 62%, and then West Virginia is sitting at 47%. West Virginia has a relatively low labor force participation rate in general, so they have fewer women are working, but they just have fewer people working in their state. Focusing on the engineering fields and shifting how we're sort of measuring the variable that we're looking at, switching to the percentage of the engineering workforce that is female. Alaska actually ranks the highest across all of the states for the percentage of women that are in engineering occupations specifically. Shout out to SWE because they did all the hard work of like pulling all this data together, and I just get to talk about it. But if you're looking for more resources and more research on sort of like digging into the why, they have just an immense catalog of research. So Alaska, we're sitting at 17% of our engineering specific occupations are women workers. That there is some finesse in that numbers. Like it's hard to measure sort of occupations and then industry because there's a lot of occupations that go into supporting those engineering occupations as well that we're not counting here. This is just those SOX codes that are engineering focused. To provide some context to this, Alaska sits at 17%, and we're at the tippy top, and then at the bottom of that is North Dakota, South Dakota, and Utah, where 8%, 7%, and 9% of their engineering occupations are women. So compared to other STEM fields, engineering is lagging a little bit in terms of like the percentage that is female. But I would like to point out here that since the 80s, engineering has progressively increased as a percentage of female representation in the engineering occupations, while other STEM fields like chemists and material scientists and then computer and mathematical occupations have started to lag behind a little bit in terms of their reaching gender parity. And then if we look at that by occupation specifically, the subfields of engineering, environmental engineers by far beats all other fields in terms of gender representation with 30% being women. And then mining and geological engineers is down there at the bottom with the 6%. The factoid I like here to point out, because we're an oil and gas state and we have a lot of petroleum engineers here, is that petroleum actually ranks pretty highly in terms of all of those fields at 20%. So shifting gears here a little bit, we did talk about the data behind education and engineering, and across the board, engineers are highly educated, and female engineers tend towards being more educated than male engineers. They seek graduate degrees at higher rates than men will. And when you compare that to the US labor force as a whole, you can kind of see some of that difference here between, bachelor's and graduate degrees versus a less than a bachelor degree across the labor force. But that trend of females tending towards more education than men is something that we see across the whole labor force, not just in engineering. And then I will end on the gender pay gap because last week we had Gender Parity Day, where the day where a woman in 2023 had to work to make the same as a man on average. Equal pay day. Thank you. So I think it's an important thing, and it's an important metric as we talk about how do we sort of reach parity, get more women in the workforce, to keep track of as well. The across the board, the gender pay gap for the US is, I didn't write it down. Yes, I did. The gender pay gap in Alaska is 72 cents on the dollar. So a woman on average makes 72 cents for the dollar of a man. We're a little bit lower than the US average, which I believe is about 78 cents for every dollar that a man makes. But the good news is that there is a far smaller gap in engineering fields. On average, female engineers make 82 cents on the dollar, which is it's a significant difference compared to the US total and then also the Alaska total. On either ends of this extreme are on either ends of this extreme, we have 98 cents on the dollar for chemical engineers. They have a really small gap there, which is really cool to see. And 84 cents for civil engineers. The exception to this, which I'd like to point out, is there in the middle, you can see post-secondary teachers in engineering, and they have the largest gender pay gap with 78% on the dollar. Not to poke anyone, but I do think that that's important when a lot of the research has shown that like having representation amongst teaching populations and having women engineers in colleges teaching the next generation leads to better representation once women enter the workforce. And so closing that gap and encouraging more women to enter teaching roles, I think, is an important thing to consider today, as you guys are talking about how to solve this challenge. Across the states, this is another little bit of law of small numbers challenge, because some of the states have thousands and thousands and thousands of engineers, and Alaska has only a couple thousand. But across the states, Alaska is kind of middle of the road in terms of what our gender pay gap for engineering looks like. At the top end of that, there's our states where women engineers on average make more than men. That's in Nevada and Delaware and Utah, which I think is another law of small numbers because they have such a small female engineering population. Women are making more than men in those fields or in those states. And then on the other end, we have North Dakota again and Maine, where the gender pay gap for engineering occupations is 77%. What is it specifically for Alaska? It is 82% in Alaska. Oh, sorry, going back. So this is my sort of end of the slides pitch for coming soon. Stay tuned. A lot of the information we talked about today was US based. And a lot of that specifically for engineering occupations hasn't really been updated since about 2018, 2019. There tends to be a data lag for labor information. So CED is working with the Department of Labor to get a custom data aggregation to put some of the numbers behind the specific engineering occupations with our labor market in Alaska and look at wages, the gender pay gap at a more granular level, sorry, and then also compare that to other occupations across our economy. Occupations that are related to engineering that sort of feed into that pipeline and that industry, but also that have comparable skill sets required or comparable levels of education to see how engineering is comparing. So that should be coming up this spring.
Hello. So before the event, we sent out a Qualtrics survey with 4 questions. We asked our wonderful industry reps to talk about what are the challenges that are facing women who are entering engineering fields and professions, what their organizations are doing to try to meet those challenges, what actions they would like to see happen, and what we may be able to do in partnership with UAF and UAA. And the responses were wonderful and amazingly thoughtful. I read them all very carefully, and 31 responses were collected, and they were placed into broad categories based on similarities. And the idea was that, because the afternoon portion of this workshop is going to be dedicated to, we're going to put our heads together and try to come up with some actionable ideas. And so hopefully with the survey, it's gotten the juices flowing a little bit, and we're not going to be starting from square one. But I wanted to share the results of the survey again. They were just so thoughtful. I think it was a really wonderful exercise. So this is qualitative analysis, which is by nature somewhat subjective. So I'm going to start with question number 1, which was, what specific challenges have you seen that tend to bar or discourage women from applying for engineering positions and or advancing their careers in STEM fields? Because we know that there's melt at every stage. So these are the categories that I came up with, and we're going to make these slides available. By the way, I see some people taking pictures. We will make the slides available. Also, when we generate a report, you know, and UAFCEM did a really nice report of the event that took place last year. We're going to do the same. We are going to put the raw responses in an appendix so that you can actually look at them, because they're really great and really thoughtful. It's probably inevitable that a couple people might think, you know, for their response, oh, she put it in the wrong category. That's not what I meant. But I hope and expect that that's the exception rather than the rule. So in terms of specific challenges, obviously family and child rearing is a big one. Women tend to have more obligations involving caregiving. Whether or not they should is a separate question, but it is a fact that we live with. And a lot of these overlap. There's also a lot of people talked about just the fact that there aren't that many people who look like them is discouraging. You know, fewer role models, fewer people that we can discuss our concerns with, maybe connected with family and child rearing. Colleagues' negative assumptions about qualifications. And again, this also overlapped. There were a lot of respondents who talked about, they assume I'm going to have babies and leave, or one respondent talked about having her first child and all of a sudden all the interesting projects dried up. So, but also, you know, maybe being pigeonholed for non-field work. It's not all related to the domestic sphere. Some of it is just they're not as good at math. They're not as serious. They're too delicate for the field. Imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, connected to and some people pointed out too that a lot of cultural traditions teach girls to be more passive and non-argumentative. That one resonated with me. I grew up in a suburban Midwestern setting, and I was policed from a young age to you know, be pleasant and not bum people out with my you know, with my directness. So lack of mentorship overlaps quite a bit with lack of other women, feeling that challenges must be navigated alone, feeling that you kind of have to figure it all out for yourself. Structural issues within the organization not only includes lack of flexibility for things like family and child rearing, but also lack of clear opportunities for advancement. And the lack of clear opportunities for advancement is one of the big contributors to the pay gap, which does increase over time. Because again, if you're getting punished for needing to spend time with your family and not promoted, you're not going to be making as much money as your male colleagues 10 years into your career. So, and that ties in nicely with what Rochelle just talked about. And then there is still sexism and hostility. And we did have some respondents talking about sexist jokes, uncomfortable situations, but also things like it's assumed that you're the one who's going to order everybody's lunch, or that you're the one who's going to take notes at the meetings. I was really struck. We had our Women in Engineering night last night, and the keynote speaker, Sarah Manelik, who is here, hit so many of these items in her talk. But also we had the Vice Provost for Student Success, Ray Ball, who's a professor of history, and she talked about her male colleagues thinking nothing of leaving their dishes for her to clean up in the break room after an event. So, so again, the counts are not to say that one issue is more important than another. Like, for example, sexism and open hostility is a smaller item, thank goodness. That does not mean that it's not, you know, really important to stamp out or to, you know, reduce the experience of people who've experienced that. This is just to give an idea of the frequency with which these different things were named. Again, we are going to make these slides available, so you'll be able to read them very carefully. In terms of actions that have been taken, again, a lot of organizations are really trying to meet these things head on. With mixed success, but you know, that mixed success does include some success. So some of the things includes outreach to young people, both college students and K-12. And then the next two was really a continuum. It was especially difficult to figure out which one belonged in which box, because role model mentorship and role modeling really run the gamut from very informal, just having an older female mentor or an older male mentor that you know that you can ask questions to. One respondent talked about how her company, actually, or it could have been his company, does a really good job of making sure that the employees know who's an expert in what area and who they can talk to if they have a problem with a particular area of the work. And that's kind of on the informal end. But then you can have very formal mentorship. You could have a formal organization for women within the company. So that can kind of be on a spectrum. And you know, when you meet with your supervisor on a set schedule to talk about your performance, is that formal or informal? That's ambiguous. There are companies who are actively hiring and actively promoting women into leadership roles, see role models. And then there are companies that are getting better about flexibility and accommodating scheduling needs, both for men and women. There were a lot of people who pointed out that we need paternity leave as much as we need maternity leave. And there were a couple respondents who talked about mostly talk without action, which is a dangerous trap, but happily this was a smaller item. So again, these are kind of the frequencies with which these different categories showed up. And in terms, the other half of the question was, we asked what organization or what actions has your organization taken? We also asked, how successful were these actions? And that was an interesting question too. The items that were perceived as successful, having women in leadership roles, the companies that were actively promoting and actively hiring qualified women and then promoting them into leadership roles. A lot of those respondents seem to think that those programs were having some success. Supervisors who were meeting regularly, discussing career goals and direction frequently. You know, again, a big source of the gender pay gap is lack of advancement. So when women feel that there's room for them to advance, they're more likely to stay within the industry. And then flexibility for maternity and paternity leave, as long as parties aren't penalized for using them. And that brings us to the next category, which was also pretty big, which was some respondents said that there was success, but they did have some caveats. So anything that was dependent on an individual to act as a role model, mentor, or career guide depends on that individual. And so while people really liked the regular meetings with supervisors and the role modeling and promoting more women into leadership positions, they do point out their ability to mentor and bring up the next generation does tend to depend on their own skills as leaders. One respondent pointed out that formal groups and organizations for women are only effective if they are taken seriously. Fair point. And one respondent, after describing some actually really pretty impressive successes, pointed out that they took 5 years of very hard work to achieve. So again, I don't think that these are a downer, but they do remind us that success takes time. The only items that were perceived as unsuccessful was talk without action. So the respondents, even with the items that were successful without caveats, I think if you try anything, there seemed to be appreciation that that you're going to at least get somewhere. And then most of the items were not indicated as successful or unsuccessful, or I guess a plurality of the items were not indicated as successful or unsuccessful because it can be hard to tell if the needle is moving in a significant way, which is fair enough. And then the third question was, what actions would you like to see your organization taking? So the implication there is that this is stuff that your particular organization maybe hasn't gotten into yet. And a big one was treat everyone equally, judge according to competence and knowledge. And this includes encouraging everyone to take advantage of opportunities such as mentorship programs, work flexibility, and leave, so that women won't be stigmatized, because there were definitely respondents who talked about if you take that flexibility to take your kid to the doctor's appointment, or if you take that maternity leave, you're looked at as less serious, which is, that's not fair. Hiring and showcasing more women was another category, including minority women. More outreach, including for young girls and students. Also more visibility for women engineers in the community, and this is about growing the pipeline. And then monetary investment was a really big one, and that includes paid maternity and paternity leave, facilities improvements like pumping rooms for lactating mothers, and other kinds of things that do cost money. Management and HR practices was another big one, and this includes ways to report instances of discrimination. We do have to feel like if there is a problem, that somebody is going to take it seriously. More structured mentorship and career advancement tracks, and better training and practice for supervisors. And then another big item was male support, and this includes cultural change on a more informal level, such as calling out bad behavior by other men. There were respondents who pointed out that it's really valuable if one of your male colleagues, says, "Hey, dude, that's not cool." So here is the frequency with which these other categories were discussed. I'm blowing through and not reading the quotes, which are amazing, because for one thing, like I said, we are going to make all the raw data available to you. But for another thing, we've got 2 amazing rockstar students, and I don't want to cut into the time for the student panel. And then the final question was university partnership. What specific actions can UAA, UAF, and your organization take to help recruit, retain, and progress women engineers? So the categories that these fell into were, the biggest one by far was more opportunities for networking and connection. People, and we hear that a lot anecdotally. You guys want to come onto campus and have more opportunities to interact with our students, which is honestly great to know, and we want to bring you on campus. And I hope that's one of the things that we can talk about, on a more nuts and bolts level today. But this includes youth outreach, like K-12, opportunities for students to interact with professionals, etc. There were a couple of respondents who pointed out, and point taken, don't just target women, and don't foster negative narratives. So women-only awards and events can be perceived as exclusive. We have just said we definitely need male support. And also, that was another theme that was coming up a lot yesterday, and that resonated with me as well. I think most of us female engineers in the room, just by the sake of the law of numbers, probability or statistics, a lot of our mentors have been men. Like I had an amazing PhD advisor who's a man. And I've just had also my peers. I've worked with just some amazing guys, and my current supervisor. So You know, not just targeting women is a really good point, given that the male allies are going to be really essential for these efforts. We're trying to make the workforce more welcoming. So that means that the welcome needs to extend needs to be from everyone. All students need to learn appropriate behavior, yes. And then of course, sometimes this can get a little bit of a downer, and we can also focus on female success, because female engineers have done really amazing things. It's not just about knocking obstacles out of the way. I mean, also it's a very rewarding career. There were people who suggested some specific improvements in teaching and curriculum. And that is something that we are actively trying to work on, and that we do need to work on to improve retention and graduation, such as promoting high impact learning practices like hands-on experiences, research, internships, etc. Hire and recruit more women and minorities to work at the university. We just talked about that with needing more female teachers. Scholarship and advocacy, research what works and what doesn't, and keep the issues visible. There were a couple of respondents who pointed out that that's a valuable thing that the university can do. And then there were a lot of ideas, and this is what really got me excited, was there were a lot of ideas for specific trainings and skills that the university can offer to students and grads. And the one that I'm super stoked about is salary negotiation. I'm ready to put that workshop together. So if you want to be part of that workshop, talk to me at the after party. So as you can see, the networking opportunities, that was a huge one. So, let's talk about that for sure. But these are all such great ideas. So again, the survey I'm so glad we did it. The responses were so thoughtful. I can't wait to share them with you in the raw data form when we give you the report. But hopefully the juices are now flowing, and we're going to be ready after lunch to start, throwing some of these ideas against the wall. But before we do that, we have got some rock star students. All right, so I would like to introduce, yeah, please do. I'd like to introduce Maya Schroeder, who is a senior in computer systems engineering and computer science. You've probably seen her on some of our brochures because Maya does everything, and she's currently the president of the Robotics Association. She's a past president of SWE. She does a lot of K-12 outreach because, let's face it, robots are super sexy. And then we've got Eleonora Stadtmuller-Caballero, who is our current student chapter president of SWE, who also does everything. She's also computer science and computer systems engineering, and also a senior. So these are two of our very amazing students, and we wanted this panel to be mostly Q&A from you, because we figured you're going to want to get some of the student experience to kind of drive the things that we're going to talk about after lunch. So we're going to let you guys ask questions, but I'm going to kick off by asking Maya and Eleonora to answer one question first, and that is, what does diversity in engineering mean to you as a student? You two are both seniors, and you're starting your job search, and you're starting to think about what's next. So what does all this mean to you?
Yeah, so diversity is a big buzzword, right? And for us, in the context of women in engineering, we are at school most of our day, and well, we want to see other women in our peers and in our instructors, and frankly, there's not as many women in the College of Engineering as there is men. So we are always really happy to see when there is a lot of women peers or women instructors around us. And I think that can really improve our own like outlook and expectation for what can then await us in the workforce if we already see that as we're going through college. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always really cool to see when a really awesome woman is out there and she's so cool. Kind of Eleonora and I coined this phrase, inspired by one of our previous professors, Dr. Louder. When we see an awesome woman, we call them a woman warrior. And so we need some more of those woman warriors out there.
So do you guys have any questions for our students? What would you like to know heading into discussion of these items after lunch? And they're going to be part of the discussion too.
Virginia, nice to meet you guys on TV last night. My question is, how do your male peers, and I'm not calling out guys, I'm just asking in general, how they, their perspective with having you in the class with them? Do you tend to feel like they'll ask you, you guys will group together to do homework, they'll ask you, or they feel like you're the one that's supposed to ask them for help? How does that dynamic work now? Is that too complex to ask? I mean, I'm hoping that'll make sense.
So I guess we're both kind of very high achievers, I would say. So so we haven't really, or I'll speak for myself, I haven't really faced that situation where I'm not getting, asked for help on stuff. People do come up to me, or men do come up to me and are like, hey, you want to work together? Can you help me on this problem, etc. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. At UAA, I've had a very positive experience working with people who look like me and who don't look like me. And I've always felt very, part of this community. And so even if we're very underrepresented, I feel like everyone is very positive and they just, want to graduate.
I feel like I graduated recently and I realized it's almost been 10 years, so hopefully that's changed. I definitely felt at UAF, thank you, Bill. I felt like there was an expectation as one of the few women in my classes to be excellent, because I felt like I had to represent why I deserved to be in that room. And I'm really hoping you guys answer this question differently, but is that still something you might feel in your classes? Like you don't represent just you two, you represent women of CE and CS.
I guess I have not felt that way whatsoever. Yeah. No.
Yeah, for me, it's a personal thing. I just want to be awesome. So I haven't really attributed it to, being a woman or anything, but it's kind of something to be proud of, I think. You've done a lot of cool stuff, and it's also kind of a cool benefit that you're representing an underrepresented population. So.
I guess I was wondering, as you guys are both seniors and graduating, maybe you've done some internships that kind of have some ideas of what's next for you, but I guess as a lot of people in the room are part of the workforce, what could we do for you as graduating seniors to set you up for success in any of the areas that you feel like maybe academia hasn't prepared you for?
So funny thing is, me and Maya have actually done an internship together. It was up on the slope with Hillcorp as an automation intern. And that experience was really positive. Our boss was very, very supportive, very helpful, just like the best boss ever. And so I think that was a very formative experience because he still to this day that really supports us in whatever we want to do and helps us out with, reference calls, all that sort of stuff. And so I really wish everyone that sort of experience. I know not everyone gets it, but I feel like increasingly we do, as women or as men, we encounter really positive internship experiences. And then something else I was really happy to see was at the career fair a few weeks ago. I could really tell that companies were pushing for women to attend the career fair and recruit women. And I feel like that is also very helpful because you see that that's who you're going to be working with, or you see a role model in that person. And I think
yeah, what Laura said, I've had 2 internships experiences so far. Both of them have been very positive if you want to go work in the workforce. So that is always a good thing if you can, if you ever have an intern and like just help mentor them and give them a positive experience. Another thing, Dr. Brock mentioned, like the negotiation workshop idea, like just being involved in things like that and putting on or helping out with things. I mean, I know you all have a lot of industry experience, so kind of passing that down to, if I was my past self, what would I have wanted to know? Can I tell someone that knowledge?
Congratulations on getting this far. But I'm also intrigued to know what was the most influential thing in you deciding to choose a STEM career, and were there any significant challenges in staying in STEM in itself in your college careers?
So for me, growing up, elementary, middle, high school, I thought I was going to be a doctor. My mother teaches medical students, and so I was kind of surrounded by that a lot. My dad is also an electrical engineer, so I had a little bit of that world as well. So the kind of changing moment for me was my senior year of high school when I was taking some classes at UAA. I was still enrolled in the AMCS program. And I took some programming classes and some electrical engineering classes. And I was like, this is so much more fun than memorizing stuff from biology or chemistry. Like, you can do that stuff. You guys are awesome, but not for me. And then kind of another impactful moment in my life is the summer after my high school year, I did a hackathon with my family. It was a breakdown hackathon where you had a weekend to do some sort of activity, and the one me and my family chose to do was make a Skittle sorter. And so we were supposed to get an Arduino kit, but there was like COVID issues and never came. So we had to like use Legos and Lego Mindstorm. And it was a super fun experience. It's like, I don't have the things I need. How do I make something happen? And my family ended up winning that competition. I was like, I want to do this more often. So I think those like really short, fun experiences for young girls or women can be very impactful. That was a long-winded answer. There was, I think, a second part of that question, which was, has there been any roadblocks along the way? I think the biggest thing was deciding on that I wanted to do engineering. I originally was going to be, I started as an electrical engineer in my first and second year at UAA. Because my dad was in electrical engineering, yeah, it's familiar, so we'll try this out. And then it took me a while to figure out like coding and programming and computer science is what I jam in. And kind of, it was like a big decision for me to change. And it was kind of harder than you would think. I mean, for me at least. So encouraging people to, try different things and don't be afraid to change your mind. and try a new field, I think that's important. Yeah, for me, it's kind of the same. My parents were both also doctors, so in STEM. And so I always assumed that I would end up in some sort of STEM field. And I was really drawn to engineering because I heard that the job outlook was really good. And I also really enjoyed programming. So that's what got me into CS and CSE. And I guess not everyone gets that kind of background where their parents are also in STEM. And, you know, growing up, you just hear things and like they teach you things just passively and, you know, what they talk about, etc. So I imagine it's a lot harder for people whose parents don't have that kind of background to get into STEM. So it's kind of a perpetual cycle, you know? So I think one of the challenges that is worthwhile to tackle is how do we get people into STEM whose parents don't necessarily have that. And a roadblock, I would say, is that it's really challenging to get women interested in things like robotics and SWE. I mean, it's in general challenging to get people into clubs, but that's been a big one for me.
I've got a question. So you guys watched the presentation on the survey respondents, and those were your female colleagues who've been in the workforce, some of them for a while, but all of them for, you know, some finite amount of time. What from the survey resonated with you, and what did you think of the responses? I ask because I feel like I didn't appreciate a lot of those things until I'd been in the workforce for a while. So I'm wondering, what's your perspective on what you just heard in terms of what those who have gone before you have said about the challenges?
Yeah, so I mean, all of those things really made sense on a fundamental level. Of course, we haven't encountered a lot of those things yet. Like I said, my internship experience was really great, so I didn't face any sort of like discrimination. There was, you know, I won't say issue, but the fact that there was only one woman up there in the team of like 30 people, I want to say. And we were not always on rotation with her, and we didn't really get to work a lot with her. But especially up there in that environment, there is not a lot of women. And yeah, I mean, things like child rearing and things like that, we just haven't encountered that yet, but everything like makes sense on a fundamental level. Something that I really appreciate is the point about male support, or as well as, you know, we shouldn't just target things towards women, we should make it all inclusive, because that, in a way, that lends it also, I don't want to say credibility because, you know, but in a way that lends it more, yeah, it makes it more, I want to say impactful if everyone is involved and not just a subset of the population involved. In terms of this latter half of the statistics and survey about how do we improve, you know, this whole issue, I've definitely been thinking about this a lot because there's a lot of things that we can try to do, but what is most effective? And at least the one that stood out to me that I think would be really helpful, I already talked about this, was that the negotiation. I think anything that helps women stand up for themselves is very important. I grew up with my mother, and she can be very direct, and she was a great mother for getting the opportunities. So if we can do that for other women, then it's just a benefit to us all.
So as you're now entering into your past student phase, becoming the real world of things, I was wondering, sometimes women versus men have a different timeline, biological clock. When I was coming up 21 years ago for things, it was this 3 under 30, having 30 somehow became the cap of when I was supposed to succeed of things. Graduate from college, get married, get a house, have children, do all of those things. And I'm wondering if you guys feel like you have all the time in the world after you graduate, or if you feel like in your head you have some sort of set time. Because the period of when you graduate to maybe 30 to 35 are it's the window for clear climbing, and also to not be classified as a geriatric pregnancy. Sorry for anybody in the group that after 35 they go your advanced maternal age, but that's where we're at. So within this, guys don't necessarily have that maybe bringing in the back of their mind, and maybe you don't either, and maybe it's oh, okay.
Not put you on the spot.
Maybe it's that, that everybody asks you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you really have those set, in your mind? I think is part of that, right? The family and life, but do you have those set things, or are you more kind of open to? And maybe, yeah, I'll cushion the blow maybe a little bit. So I was inspired by the SWE speaker yesterday, who said that she had to make some really fundamental choices about how fast she climbed versus how much time she took to build her own internal personal life. And then she was perfectly fine making those, and I don't think that you would make any choice of the exceptions, right? But you do sometimes, and it used to be a different, not long ago, where a woman in STEM either had to be extraordinary, be the exception, and maybe choose not to be a mother, because then you are now lesser, right? You were now, oh, obviously she's chosen a domestic life. She's not going to be as serious about STEM. And how far in the age of the 21st century we push past that idea where you're I am not even, I have no, so.
Yeah, I probably am not the greatest person to ask about this because my future long-term planning skills are not there. I'm going 2-year increments, I think, maybe 4-year increments. In terms of, what I want my future to look like, and, am I planning, if I want to have a family, I haven't really thought that far. So I guess I don't feel pressured to, have that plan. Okay.
It's so monumental what you said.
I think the only far off plan I have right now is that when I retire, I want to have a bunch of cool hobbies that I have a spin-off business maybe or something. So I don't think so.
There's long-term awesome tips.
There we go.
Retirement now.
Absolutely.
When you're going out for new jobs and you're bidding out, are you thinking of the career benefits? So again, going back to our SWE speaker from last night, she was saying that she was the first person to take maternity leave in her firm. They literally had to create it kind of for her. So, taking positions now, and you're thinking about some of those benefits alongside of it, of obviously retirement, got to get that match, but other sort of things that you're thinking about.
Yeah,
the industry can support for your.
I think the speaker yesterday, Sarah, she made me definitely think about what am I going to look for in the benefit package for my company. But besides that, I recently have taken right now I'm taking a engineering economics course. It's all spreadsheets. It's actually a lot cooler than I thought it would be. I made a spreadsheet of how much money I would have to make in order to retire by 30. And it's a lot of money. But I think it made me sort of think about, these are the salaries that might be offered and what does that mean to me in my future? So I think it's a good starting point. I definitely think that is something that we need to think about more. Personally, I'm a little bit older. So I've kind of gotten over the UAA has a lot of, people who are older who are doing their bachelor's degree. So I've kind of gotten over that, being, I'm older than everyone around me, blah, blah, blah. So I've kind of gotten over that. But that also means that maybe I should be thinking about things like what you're mentioning here. When do I want to, start my family? What do I want to have done and accomplished at 35? Where do I see myself, etc. Personally, I'm not, I'm kind of worried about other things that industry. I'm an international student, so I have to figure out a way. If I want to stay in Alaska, how do I make that happen? And so that's primarily what I'm looking for in the companies that I've been. But all the other benefits kind of come secondary to that right now. But I definitely think, things like the salary negotiation, things like being on the lookout for the benefits that a company can offer you, teaching people how to do financial planning. That is definitely something that we have to do more of because me personally, I am not proficient in that yet. And I would like to be. Good workshop idea. Plan your finances for the next 4 years.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for being the panel today. I would like a little bit of advice. I am the son of a car dealer. And oftentimes find myself in front of a group of young middle schoolers or upper, 6th graders or something like that. And I want to talk them into thinking about engineering in very short order. And I would really like to encourage a diverse group of students to come. And I want to get the point across that you can be an engineer. What do I tell them? What do I tell? Because we're going to talk about, anyway, what do I tell those students to bring them to us?
Bring a robot.
I would say it's an instance of it's hard to tell them and it's better to make them. And I mean that's I think when you give people a chance to do some hands-on activity like you're gonna make a little robot today or things that make them do and not just tell them because words can just go in one ear and out the other, but experiences, that's kind of where you start a little fire in their brain. So in terms of what to tell them, I'm not a salesperson. There's probably someone better to tell you what to tell them, but just try to, I think, make it interactive as much as possible. I would second that. And just say that hands-on activities and really cool experiments where they get to make something work, I think is the way to go.
We had a question back there.
So we've talked about the idea of working for other people. Have either you thought about or been exposed to opportunities to learn about working for yourself and starting a business?
Yes. Currently, I'm working on a project called Quayside. Eric is actually kind of heading the project. Sitting right here in the blue shirt. And it's basically a project management tool to automate project management. So I was lucky enough to be connected with the opportunity to work on this. And so it kind of puts the idea in your brain of, oh, I can make the software and I can have a business for myself. Where was I going? So yes, in short, yes, but I think in the curriculum at UAA, maybe not. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're in Alaska, there's a lot of small businesses, and yeah, I know UAF has a program called Students to Startups, where they
connect students for an internship with startup companies to, kind of work with them. And also they do seminars on startups and I think how to make your own, small business and how all of that works. Apart from that, I haven't encountered anything in the curriculum, like Maya said. But the idea is definitely out there, the specifics of how one would go about that are more vague for me.
I think this is going to be the last question because we've got lunch.
This is my second question, so everybody else.
All right.
To what extent have you been exposed to career tracks that are possible for you? Or do you feel like you only have like a 2-year lens on what you're doing after graduation? For instance, I'm a registered professional engineer. I knew in order to do that while I was in school, UAM, thankfully not UAA at the moment, makes you take your FE test while you're in school. And making you do that really gives you one of the building blocks to what becomes a registered professional. Of course, you have to get your experience with your PE test. That's one track. I know I am a computer engineer, so I know it's not as valuable in our degree, but to what extent do you feel like various career tracks that you have so you can make those building blocks along the way and not miss opportunities or delay yourself?
I'm definitely, I was definitely thinking about, well, for CS and CSE, you can go two different ways. You can go into engineering, which is what I'm currently kind of heading into. I've had my automation internship and now I have an electrical engineering internship that deals with control systems planned out for this summer. Or you can do computer science stuff like web development, database stuff, data science. You can go that route. And for the more traditionally engineering route, yes, you probably want to do your FE and then plan on getting your PE if that's what turns out that works for your field and your interests. And I do kind of wish that UAA had like an FE prep for something other than, I know there's for civil and for mechanical, but I don't think there's that for anything else, which that would be great.
In terms of like future planning, I think for computer science, which is more of what I'm hoping to get into, it's a lot, there's not much of an FE or anything. It's kind of pick a company and go. In computer science, it's a lot more important to do things like leak code and things like that. And in our curriculum, that really isn't talked much about. But we have a lot of awesome clubs and at UAA, and those really can help expose especially me to different things. Like I think I was exposed to my first nuclear problem in our computer science club, and fields like robotics and cybersecurity, there's clubs for that. So those extracurriculars really help define what am I interested in, what can I go do.
I would also say that for CS, personal projects are really important. And I do feel like, especially as I've been getting into my higher level classes, that has given me, we have projects that we do throughout the semester, and that has really given me kind of a framework to stand on and explore my own personal projects. So I appreciate that.
One thing that could help students that want to go into, computer engineering, I know this is a computer science degree, so you really get into the theory, but most of the people coming out of this program are probably going to go into the computer part of computer science, which is, I'm going to go develop for a company. And skills like GitHub, good coding practices, like the fundamental skills of being a good software engineer are really not taught in our curriculum. And those are the things that, I have to learn through doing my own projects and working with, an internship. And so I think that could be one place that helps students really succeed in their future education.
right, let's thank Maya and Eleanor.